Lesson 21.2, Task 1. Recognize possible associations between categorical variables. Calculate and interpret conditional relative frequencies. A conditional relative frequency is the ratio of a joint relative frequency to a related marginal relative frequency in a two-way table. So, here's how you can find this. So you find the conditional relative frequency by taking the joint relative frequency and dividing it by the marginal relative frequency. Remember earlier we learned that the numbers here in the middle, these are called joint relative frequencies, and then the totals are the marginal. These are the marginal relative frequencies. All right, so you can determine whether there is an association between categories in a two-way relative frequency table by comparing a conditional relative frequency to a corresponding marginal relative frequency. All right, so it says a group of people of age 6 to 49 are asked whether they prefer dogs or cats as pets. The results of the survey are shown in the two-way relative frequency table. What is the percent of all those surveyed who are ages 6 to 17? So you can see here, ages 6 to 17, we would have 44% out of 100%. So this would be 44% are ages 6 to 17. So you would look for the total there. All right, so it says, what is the percent of all those surveyed who are age 6 to 17 and they prefer dogs? All right, so they're age 6 to 17 and they prefer dogs. So this would be 20%. All right, again, this comes directly from the table here. All right, of the people ages 6 to 17 surveyed, what percent prefer dogs? To answer this question, you need to find the conditional relative frequency. All right, so people ages 6 to 17 who prefer dogs. All right, so we're going to take the number of preferred dogs divided by the total in the age category 6 to 17. So let's see what that gives us. So let's do 0.20 divided by 0.44, and that's going to give us about 45%. All right, so 45% prefer dogs in the age category 6 to 17. All right, percent of age 6 to 17 surveyed who prefer dogs equals the percent of all surveyed who are age 6 to 17 and prefer dogs over the percent who are 6 to 17. So that's where these numbers here come from. This was the preferred dogs. This was 6 to 17 age group, so that's how we got the 45%. The percent of those surveyed who prefer dogs is all right, let's look and see how many preferred dogs. So we're going to look back up here. And if you look back up here, the preferred dogs is 31%. So out of all age categories, age doesn't matter, the total number of percent that preferred dogs would be the 31%. This information comes from the bottom of the dog column. All right, if age doesn't matter as far as dog preference is concerned, you could expect the percent of people aged 6 to 17 who prefer dogs to be about the same as the percent of all people surveyed who prefer dogs. Which choice best explains if age matters as far as the preference is concerned? All right, it says it does matter because the 6 to 17 group has a higher percent than the entire group. It does not matter because there is approximately the same percent It does matter because 6 to 17 has a lower percent. All right, so the first answer is the correct one. It does matter because this one has a higher percent than the overall group. All right, would you say there is an association or there is no association between being 6 to 17 and preferring dogs? All right, so I would say there is an association between being age 6 to 17 and preferring dogs. The percent of those age 6 to 17 who prefer dogs is greater than the overall percent of those who prefer dogs. All right, so again, if you look back here at the table, you can see that this percent here is much higher than this percent. So it is much higher than the overall percent. So if we looked at 0.20 divided by 0.31, that's about 65% of the dog lovers are in this age group here. So that is significantly higher. All right, so it says in parts C through F, you were given an age group and asked what percent of those group preferred dogs. Now look at the other way. Now look at this the other way around. Given the group who prefer dogs, what percent of ages 6 to 17? All right, so of those surveyed who prefer dogs, blank are in the 6 to 17 age group. All right, so if we look here, of those who prefer dogs, there's 31% prefer dogs. 20% of those are in that category. So 20 divided by 31 gives us 65%. All right, if dog preference doesn't matter as far as age is concerned, the percent of dogs preferring people who are age 6 to 17 would be about the same as the percent of all people surveyed who are age 6 to 17. Complete the explanation as to whether it matters. All right, so dog preference does matter as far as age is concerned. The percents are significantly different. Significantly, the percents are 65 and 44. All right, so you can see that is all of task 1. So if you have any questions, let me know. Lesson 21.2, task 2. Identify possible associations. The results of a survey of 200 high school students about their method of transportation to school are shown. Find the conditional relative frequency of those who arrive at school by car, given that they are in the 10th grade. Determine whether there is an association between being in 10th grade and arriving at school by car. All right, method of transportation. We've got car, bus, and other. This could be walking, riding your bike, skateboard, whatever. All right, down the side is going to be grade, 9, 10, 11, or 12. And then we've got the totals across the bottom and down the right-hand side. All right, so it says find the conditional relative frequency. So the conditional relative frequency is found by taking the joint relative frequency and dividing that by the marginal relative frequency. So since we're looking at 10th grade students who arrived by car, we're going to take 10th grade students, that's this row right here, and we're going to take the number that arrived by car, which is 4%, and divide that by 30%. So 0.04 divided by 0.30 is about 13%. The percent of 10th grade students surveyed who arrive at school by car is 13%. How is this 13% different from the percent of all students surveyed who are in the 10th grade and arrive at school by car? All right, so the first one says the percent of all students surveyed who are in the 10th grade and arrive at school by car is the conditional relative frequency. All right, so that would not be the conditional relative frequency. So let's look at the next one. The percent of all students surveyed who are in 10th grade and arrive at school by car is 4%. This is a joint relative frequency in the relative frequency table. which is not the same as a conditional relative frequency. So if we look up here, remember before we did talk about these middle numbers here are your joint frequencies, and then the totals here are your marginal frequencies. So that means this one is going to be correct because 4% was the number of sophomores who arrived at school by car. All right, it says determine if there is an association. If there is no association, then the percent of 10th grade students surveyed who arrive at school by car should be 35%. All right, complete the explanation as to why the percent of 10th grade students surveyed who arrive at school by car should be 35% if there is no association. If there is no association, the percent of 10th grade students surveyed who arrive at school by car should be the same as the marginal relative frequency of all those who arrive by car. Okay, so that means there is no association. So the marginal relative frequency would have to be close to the conditional relative frequency, and it's not because 13 is not close to 35. All right, it says, however, the percent of 10th grade students surveyed who arrive at school is 13%. This means there is an association between being in the 10th grade and arriving at school by car. All right, that's all for task 2. If you have any questions, let me know.